Joe Dante created one of the most popular films of the 80s with Gremlins. Despite making some other cult favorites like Explorers or The Burbs, Dante never seemed to have made another movie that was quite as big and successful and important as Gremlins. With an obvious love for the sci-fi and horror films and effects of the 50s and 60s, Gremlins paid tribute to that era while also standing as its own thing. Dante would again pay homage to the era when he created the throwback film Matinee. As another cult favorite, let's take a look back at the 1993 film. Matinee takes place in Key West in the year 1962, just as the Cuban Missile Crisis is ongoing, with the US at a standstill, with various emotions swirling as the nuclear war feels imminent. Lawrence Woolsey, a filmmaker, plans to show his new Rumble-Rama feature titled Mant at the local theater. As fear and doom sweep the town, the children all come together to see this epic half-man, half-ant B-movie, leading to shenanigans, close calls, and an overall coming-of-age attitude. The premise of Matinee is simple enough. Since nearly half the film takes place at the theater, with the film within the film Mant consistently being cut to for various scenes, you can tell that Joe Dante really wanted to make a 60s era B-movie, but since no studio would ever produce something like that in 1993, he used Matinee's storyline as a cover-up for his ultimate passion. Truthfully, no studio wanted to make Matinee either. The original production company went out of business, and while Universal was only the distributor, the producers basically had to beg them for the rest of the money. Unfortunately, at the time, Matinee was a flop, even if it had a pretty small budget. I'm not sure how much Universal ended up caring, since Jurassic Park would only be released a few months later. Matinee is my idea of a cute film that has a lot of serious stuff going on in the background, but with its childlike mindset, it attempts to transport you to what it was like growing up in this time period. When I first saw this, I didn't really get sucked in. It's a wonderful tribute to the movie-going experience, but I wasn't a fan of the younger characters, and John Goodman, while giving a great performance, didn't seem to have enough material to make a big impression. Watching it again, it plays a lot differently than I remember, especially having been through the 2020 pandemic. Look, it has a lot of similarities. In this case, they're dealing with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and yet some of the kids are making really weird jokes about the possibility of being blown up, or if they'll live to see the end of the week, and are still trying to live their lives the best they can, while the adults are ranging with their reactions from, "I've seen this before," to pure chaos. When I saw everyone in that store trying to pack up all the goods for an impending apocalypse, it felt all too familiar to everything experienced in 2020. There's even a lady stocking up on toilet paper. During my first viewing, I didn't really buy that any of these characters would act so nonchalant, and I thought they were playing too humorously with a subject that was important and tense. Now, I find the balance to be much more relatable. With how crazy things got this past year, there was something to appreciate about levity, or any occasion where people could come together. By relating to the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, this is a showcase of the lighter side of a situation that was scary, with kids being kids, and taking advantage of movie theater entertainment as a distraction. John Goodman is playing a William Castle type, a filmmaker who was famous for having gimmicks that often needed actors within the theater itself, along with props and devices that played with the senses. He also has a lot of similarities to Hitchcock, with his on-screen personality and an adoration for the art of cinema. Goodman is so positive and loves what he does, but never puts himself on a pedestal. He respects the kids, and he works well with others, and is a glorified version of what we'd hope our heroes from Hollywood would truly be like. Every time he shows up, he steals the show. I love when he breaks down the psyche of adults. It's a great line. "That's just a hustle, kid."
Grown-ups are making it up as they go along, just like you do.
Being an adult, I can confirm this statement. The child actors aren't all that great, But honestly, with today's child actors, I'm probably being spoiled. Child acting has improved so much, I can't get into these characters, but they're only meant to be a vessel for the audience to be transported to their younger days, and the 60s itself. That's not to say they're all unmemorable though. Kelly Martin, who plays Sherry, is a standout, really playing up the personality of a young girl trying to be older than she is, which is definitely something I think we've all seen before. The recreation of this era is spot on. You can tell how much the production designers played up the Americana aesthetic of the time. It also features some great actors that appeared in some classic B-movies, like Kevin McCarthy from Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and Dick Miller, of course. It isn't a Joe Dante movie without Dick Miller. However, a lot of the time, things are moving aimlessly along. For the most part, it's just a slice of life story, featuring a bunch of different characters that don't get enough time to make their mark. We keep building towards the day Mant will finally premiere, but in the grand scheme, it moves at a slow pace before we get to the theater. I also don't like when they have young characters start a romantic relationship. There's something special about finding love at that age, but when they get locked in the bomb shelter and talk about repopulating the earth, it's more awkward than it is funny. I've seen them do young couples before, and there's a way to do it right, and here it doesn't work. Luckily, once at the theater, there's a lot of comedy to be had, and things get crazy. The in-house special effects are being handled by this crazy ex-boyfriend who, after seeing his ex with another guy, decides to attack the new guy while dressed in an ant suit, with everyone in the audience thinking it's part of the show. The rumble-rama is too intense, it's making the theater shake like crazy, so everyone thinks they're being bombed from Cuba. The theater owner himself has installed a bomb shelter, being paranoid throughout, and the upstairs balcony begins to collapse, leading to a satisfying destruction. Honestly, if the whole movie just took place at the theater, while the entirety of Mant played in real time, I think it would have made for a better movie. I don't think you need to have nearly 1 hour of setup. Just get the details out about the Cuban Missile Crisis, introduce the characters in the waiting line, and let the hijinks ensue during the premiere. The movies within the movie are almost better than Matinee itself. Mant is a tribute to many things, but mostly the original Fly film, and I love how quirky and Roger Corman-esque it is. You can watch the full thing on the Shout Factory Blu-ray, but I don't think the shook-up shopping cart ever had a longer version produced. This one is almost just as entertaining, but for different reasons, as it pays an almost cynical homage to the comedies made in the 60s, most specifically those made by Disney. It even features a young Naomi Watts, so I don't know, maybe they could call her up one day, have her star in an actual feature-length version of the shook-up shopping cart. The best parts are when John Goodman simply talks about his love for movie making and movies in general, the love for the theater, and why scary films are necessary. I see a lot of directors make a movie that's just a tribute to cinema itself, but I never see the actual appreciation for the movie-going experience done in the same way that Matinee does it. It's kind of sad because if you look at the numbers, the audience originally rejected Matinee, even if it got good reviews. Like I said, Jurassic Park came out the same year. I don't think people really wanted to be transported to the 60s when groundbreaking special effects were right around the corner. Even if Jurassic Park, in a lot of ways, is just a bigger budget B-movie. I think Matinee came out at the wrong time. Too late for any connection to be made to the period it was playing up, and too early for the nostalgia to come in for those who grew up in the 60s, and for the love of practical effects to become nostalgic itself, as they would start being phased out in the later years. If Matinee were made a few years later, a lot of this probably would have been done in CGI, even if it's recreating an era where computer graphics didn't exist. Even today, these effects, especially the ones during the Mant sequences, look so good, and was probably one of the last Hollywood movies where classic effects dominated. I don't think this movie would have looked or been produced the same in any other year besides 1993. And I also think that had it been released in any other year but 1993, it probably would have been more successful. And sure, the characters and the story are a bit underwhelming, but as a movie just about movies, it's one of the best that's ever been made. And as a cinephile, I'll definitely be returning to it in the future. Special thanks to Spencer for this Patreon request. Thanks for watching the video, and special shout out to Lauren, Anthony, Anna, Kirsten, Spencer, Lucas, Ryan, and Robert for supporting me on Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you can get exclusive blogs and videos, and for just $7, you can get your own monthly movie review. I hope you stick around, cinephile, and have a happy, productive day.